That took a lot longer than normal, but kids are in bed.
Good, because I want to show you what Marvel is doing with Civil War II.
All right, so big news today in the Marvel comic world. Retailers today received a postcard. This is from Marvel, which a little image right here of a cover art of Sam Wilson and Iron Man fighting in the same fashion that Iron Man and Captain America, because now Sam Wilson's Captain America in the comics.
Mhm.
So, but those Iron Man and Sam Wilson fighting with Roman numeral 2 in the style and font of the Civil War comic event from a couple years back, and saying spring of 2016.
Which is exciting, because every year in Marvel Comics they have like a big comic event, and this is kind of teasing a Civil War II, which is neat. Especially with the Civil War movie coming out next year as well.
Definitely. Well, we kind of got us thinking about that. Each culture has their mythos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different stories that kind of reflect the core values of the society, and superheroes and stories about superheroes of some sort. If you go back to Greek mythology, you've got, Odysseus and, all of the Greek Hercules.
A lot of yeses.
Yeah, a lot of those. But that their mythos, and each culture kind of seems to have their stories that resemble their society. And right now, I don't think you could argue with the fact that the superhero is our mythos.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it kind of, the superheroes themselves not only resemble the values that we have as society, but right now I think that the stories we're telling with those, because superheroes have been around for
oh yeah, long time. Well, I mean, it's nothing new, and a lot of these things aren't new, but it is, I think, a big reflection. The superhero narrative right now is a reflection on our society and on civil and human rights.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention when we were talking about the Captain America Winter Soldier, that particular story itself, which deals a lot with Hydra and one group of government entity, and the destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the destruction of a good governmental entity, and another one coming out, and how Captain America was kind of the moral compass, and he did everything right that whole time, and he was kind of an example of what we want to be as a people. We want to make the right decisions all the time.
Well, and in that, Captain America kind of symbolizes trusting people, whereas Hydra, and even to a lesser extent S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, represent the mistrust. And we have to put these policies in place. We need to put these different safeguards in place just in case something bad happens.
Well, right, yeah, and I think Hydra represents controlling all decisions, because they talk about not trusting anybody and trying to create the fear and the terrorist acts and everything like that to create a society that's based off of fear, that is so afraid that they want someone to make the decisions for them. And that they want someone to come in and save the day, and that Hydra was hoping to do that. Nick Fury, on the other hand, would be somebody that's okay with a little bit of freedom, but like he talked about with his grandfather. Remember that scene where he talks
talking about his in the elevator, and he had his paper bag.
He had trust, but he had his gun.
Yeah.
And then on the other side we have Captain America, that is all about letting people make choices and be free to make mistakes, and to be and to do well and to do poorly at the same time, kind of a full freedom type person. And it was interesting how all three of them had different ideas, not necessarily like say.
Well, and you could even argue that none of those are necessarily wrong or bad. I mean,
because they all have the same end goal. I mean, Hydra's end goal is to get everybody to do have good things and protection,
right?
But through horrible means,
right?
And control,
right?
And then Nick Fury is the same thing, where there's trust but there's mistrust, and then Captain America, his other one, idealistic. Captain America 2 or Winter Soldier leads right into so it's really the end credit scene from Age of Ultron. Leads itself right into Captain America 3 or Civil War, which
Right.
MCU decided to go with the Civil War, which was another the comic event, the big giant event, a couple years back. And in the Civil War, this is where there has been a giant. And tell me if this sounds similar, but there's a giant moment where some superheroes they're kind of low end superheroes beginning as new ones, go in to save the day and end up blowing up an entire block and killing 60 kids in the process of doing that. So that giant thing that happens and a bunch of kids dying creates a lot of panic, a lot of mistrust for superheroes, because they're the ones that are to blame for the event. And so because of that, there becomes a big giant push in the government to have all superheroes registered, so that they have to become government employed people rather than doing their own thing, and almost the same thing as Watchmen, same thing as The Incredibles, which...
Right. Well, the whole idea of government regulation of whether you want to call them mutants or evos or epics or superheroes or whatever your comic book media of choice chooses to call it, there's often a lot of times where the government sees that there is this problem, or what they perceive to be a problem, and they want to know how to go about fixing it. If you start with a book by Brandon Sanderson called Steelheart, which came out a few years ago, it kind of starts on the theory that anyone that receives superpowers will ultimately become evil. The more that they use their powers, the more evil they become.
I think the catchphrase in the book is "absolute power corrupts absolutely."
Right. And the interesting thing, I mean, you can even make a comparison to the movie Megamind, where Megamind, you know, he's created this persona of himself, of this bad guy, and now that he doesn't have Metro Man to fight anymore, he needs to create a new good guy. So he gives just some average guy superpowers, and this average guy, what does he do with it? He steals video games and movies and tries to get the girl. Like, he's ultimately selfish and out for himself. And so Steelheart is kind of all about that, you know, anyone with these superpowers is going to use them in selfish or nefarious ways.
Right. Which kind of leads it to the question with X-Men and those with the government fear that when given a lot of control and given freedom, I guess, to the superheroes who have a lot of power, when given freedom to power, the fear that they're going to do something bad with it, and that fear drives control, drives regulations, drives rules.
Exactly. So you have the 3 original X-Men movies, and then you also have Days of Future Past, which I think Days of Future Past even more so, you know, really, really touches on this, where you have Bolivar Trask, who is trying to figure out these mutants and study them and figure out how do we take them down. They're threatening us and our lives because they're this new, different species, race, whatever, and we need to protect what we have. And
right, and then you move
that's
into
an interesting topic as well.
It is
of denying other people rights under the guise of protecting your own rights.
Right. Which kind of, again, another superhero story that's coming about with the reboot of reboot's the right word, but the return of Heroes.
Yeah, Heroes Reborn.
It's a similar idea, though.
Similar, yeah.
Trying to register all the superheroes and then groups hunting them down. Similar, again, with the Civil War coming out soon. In the comic book story. And again, I don't know how the MCU is going to take the spin off it, because there's a few things that they probably have to do differently. Again, not having X-Men with the rights to make them in the movie, as well as not having the Fantastic Four, which are kind of like pieces to it.
Right. And a lot of things that were in the comics leading up to Civil War that the Marvel Cinematic Universe isn't really going to touch, like the Planet Hulk stuff.
Right. Yeah, in the case anybody, according to the comic books, that's why the Hulk isn't. There's a lot of questions. Why isn't the Hulk going to be cast in Civil War? Well, in the comic book stories, he's not, because actually what's happened is Iron Man, out of fear of what Hulk. We saw that in Age of Ultron, where Iron Man with his Hulk Buster fought with the. Iron Man has that fear of Hulk not doing good when given the opportunity to be the Hulk. It's that fear that the fear of the unknown. You don't know if Hulk's going to be good or if he's going to kill the good guys. So that fear.
So he had to create something that could neutralize the Hulk in case the Hulk hulked out.
Right, and in the comics and in the movie they do the Hulkbuster, but in the comics they actually exile Hulk to planet Hulk and send him away because they're afraid of what he's going to do. And that became a group decision with a lot of the the leaders of the different groups, Professor X, Reed Richards of Fantastic Four, and all them. They send him away, and that whole idea of exiling somebody out of fear of what they could do rather than what they've done becomes a big kind of.
Well, but you could argue that the Hulk has caused a lot of destruction and problems.
But everybody else has. I mean, you can't tell me Iron Man hasn't destroyed a lot of stuff.
Well, the collateral damage of superhero battles is just astronomical.
Right,
I mean,
but they do address that in the Civil War story.
Right.
The government kind of says that.
And from what I understand, I don't know as much about what DC is doing with Batman versus Superman, but from what I understand, that's going to be one of the main premises of that movie is all of the damage that was caused by the battle between General Zod, and Superman. That one of Bruce Wayne's buildings or something like that in Metropolis was destroyed, and there was casualties and things like that, and so that's where that kind of arises. So I mean, it's not even just Marvel doing it; it's in a lot of different fronts where we're seeing this.
Right, and again, I know it's a superhero story, but it does kind of reflect kind of our situation our society is in right now, because we have those questions of who's going to pay for natural catastrophes, and that's one of the questions in Civil War is when buildings get destroyed by non-government entities and who takes care of it. But if you register the superhumans and make them government employees, then they become
liable for the damage that they do.
Right, or the government does. The government can say, yes, we'll take care of that.
If they're employed by the government.
Right, the government says, yes, we'll take care of it, we'll pay for that,
and
this
what we're talking about is specific to Civil War, where kind of the argument that Iron Man has is we should register all of these people with powers, or Inhumans, or however they're going to classify them in the movie when they do that, but and basically regulate them and have them become government employees, so that they have some kind of something over them.
But then it becomes a question of who has control over you, because you're superhuman, but then the government's controlling what you do. Also talking about licensing superhumans, not like in a copyright sense, but like getting them certificates.
Right,
and
like a driver's license.
Right.
Yeah, like, all right, you have these powers. Here's all these things that you need to learn before you're allowed to use these powers.
I think with Civil War, the reason why Civil War is going to be so big is, for me, is because in the story you have Iron Man versus Captain America, and I think to a certain degree as well with Batman versus Superman, we have two iconic heroes that are both associated with good, and I think looking at my Facebook feed and looking at things like that, I have people that I look to and I respect that are on different sides of different arguments, that are around politically charged arguments, and looking at them honestly, objectively, from a middle of the road standpoint, both have merit. Both sides have things that are that they're right about, and things that they're maybe a little more extreme about. But within the history, when it comes to those dichotomies and those issues and those polarizing topics, the stories have shown one side or the other and said this one is the right decision, this is the right way to go, by having a good guy that does the good thing and a bad guy that advocates for the wrong thing. And with Captain America and Iron Man fighting against
they're both good guys. They're both classified as heroes, but they have completely different opinions on the topic. So I mean, it's a good representation too of just, I guess, kind of understanding that none of us with our different opinions are saying, oh, I'm the good guy and you're the bad. Well, that is what we're saying. We're saying I'm the good guy and my opinion is right. But none of us with these opinions are necessarily good or bad. We're all trying to be good, and we're all trying to make decisions and figure things out in our minds that we feel is right, but somebody might have a completely opposite point of view, and they're doing the exact same thing, trying to figure out, well, what makes sense to me, what what's best for me and my family, you know?
I think like right now our society is so right with all the things politically, and again I'm not pointing one way or the other, but I'm saying that our society is so separated, where every issue is becoming a big, almost like a civil war, where a lot of families are torn between, not necessarily like actually a war, but torn between different ideals and things that they are very, very, very strongly adamant about. What I'm really, really looking forward to with the Civil War movie is, I know it's a Captain America story, but whether they obviously depict Iron Man as a negative character, because I mean his side, it's very, very understandable. It's very, very the way that he's going about doing it may not be necessarily right. I don't think, but again, based on the comic book, but his argument is very, very sound about, you know, people being afraid and people being in the government, and that the superhero's job is to protect the people, and if they are afraid of them, they can't actively protect them. So he's got a valid point. So I'm interested to see how they show those. And again, it's interesting that Marvel came out with a potential reoccurrence to it, because again, these are topics that can't really be
put to rest.
Solved.
I mean, it's something that has continued to come up and probably will come up until I don't know. Is there something where all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, hey, you know what? Let's just be nice to everyone.
Well, that's kind of the hope that for a lot of us, but I don't know if our world is at a place where we can do that ever. I don't know. We look back at, like, especially one of the great things about Civil War, the comic book, and I can't urge you guys to read this enough. I think it's fantastic, and it's the way it handles is great. After every story, kind of like The Watchmen, there's a little section where you can read about it, where it talks about how that story, that issue, is similar to the internment camps in World War II, to Vietnam, to even the Revolutionary War, and all these different events. And what it's showing is that we, as a society, repeat the whole thing. Right. We create the dichotomy, create the separation, create ourself versus the other, and then battle it out. And the reason why it's so popular right now is because we're doing it again.
Right.
So I'm interested to see how MCU handles it, if they try to push one mindset over the other, or if they try to make something in between, or especially since it's if
it's going to be something where they leave the choosing of sides up to the viewer. I don't know.
Well, I know that
who would you root for? Would you root for Iron Man, or would you root for Captain America? I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, let us know if you want to leave a comment down below. What do you think superhero stories are trying to tell us right now?
Shall we play a game?
Let's do it. Let's do Hold the Bacon. Oh! One quick thing before we get into this next section. I need to make a quick comment about our last show when we talked about time travel movies. Somebody in the comments mentioned the movie About Time. I hadn't seen About Time because I have this thing about Rachel McAdams, and and even in like the first half of the movie, we were watching it, and her character's name is Mary. And she reads books for a living. And I wanted to hate it. I wanted to hate it so bad, and it was an amazing movie. It was so wonderful. It was about, valuing time with your family above all else. It was so good. So thank you for the recommendation. I'm so glad that I was able to watch that. And it would probably punch 13 going on 30 out of my top 3. So for our Hold the Bacon tonight, we're going to do DC Universe versus Marvel Universe. So our own comics Civil War type thing. So we're going to do Christopher Reeve, the original best Superman, and Chris Evans, our Captain America.
Okay, alright, so.
Ready?
Let's go.
Alright, so I'm going to start with, if we do Christopher Reeve with Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour in Somewhere in Time.
Okay.
And she is in Wedding Crashers.
That's right.
She's in Wedding Crashers.
Do you know what? Vince Vaughn would make a really good supervillain.
Wait. Is it Starsky and Hutch? Vince Vaughn isn't in Waiting, is he?
No, Ryan Reynolds is in Waiting.
And Justin Long.
Justin Long.
That movie's stupid.
It is stupid.
Or am I thinking of a different movie?
No, you're thinking of that's Starsky and Hutch.
But he's
Vince
in that
Vaughn,
too.
He's the funeral crasher in Wedding Crashers.
Yeah. Ma! Where's my meatloaf?
Got it. Where are we going to, Chris Evans?
But I'm the one that got Anna Faris. Okay, go
okay,
ahead.
Can I use Stan Lee?
No!
Why not? He's in the movie.
Then
Okay.
He's in every Marvel movie.
I know, but I'm getting him to Marvel.
Is he in another non-Marvel movie?
Okay. Christopher Reeves is in Summertime with Jane Seymour, who was in Wedding Crashers with Bradley Cooper, who was in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah, Bradley Cooper.
Yes, who's in Guardians of the Galaxy with Stan Lee, who was in everything. Captain
Who's
America.
in Marvel? Chris Evans.
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper.
But you could even do...
I feel the same about Bradley Cooper as I do Rachel McAdams, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
I liked him in a few things. I liked him in Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, I liked his voice in Guardians of the Galaxy.
What was his voice?
Okay, I like Silver Linings Playbook.
Was it because of Alias that ruined me on him?
I forgot he was an Alias.
How could you forget that he was an
With
Alias?
Jennifer Garner.
I know. And the guy that was in Never Been Kissed. What's his name? Wasn't that the same guy? Oh, it was too.
Victor Garber?
Not Victor Garber. No, the one that played like her partner, handsome guy.
On Alias?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
And he was the teacher.
I think his name was Vaughn. Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Vaughn, yeah.
Oh, J.J. Abrams and his Alias and stuff, and going to dance clubs and finding artifacts in the back.
We should do a J.J. Abrams show.
So again, reminder, let us know in the comments if you side with either Iron Man or Captain America in the argument for Civil War, if you've read the comics especially. If you're just hearing about it just now, which one you think you side with. Also, click here to subscribe, and here to watch some of our other videos, and give us a big thumbs up.